notice as you're looking around the cemetery, the headstones are made from a lot of different materials. Granite, marble, limestone, as well as cement and zinc. We have just a few zinc headstones compared to all the other ones, but you notice this gray, kind of blue-gray one. It's next to the, we're pretty sure that's a marble one right next to it. Some of the marble and limestone are hard to tell apart because of how deteriorated they are. But that bluish-gray one is actually a zinc one, and it's made from a mold, and then it's coated, and they're supposed to last indefinitely compared to a limestone or
even
marble.
More than marble, huh?
Yeah, even more so than marble.
You get a few tree stones too, right?
Right, yeah. What they used to do is they would pour concrete into a mold that was made from a tree trunk. All of these plots were fences. You can imagine like those black wrought iron fences that would come up to about here. All over this cemetery, that's what they had. And you can imagine the city trying to take care of the cemetery like that now.
So I'm going to tell you about Henry Clark. He was born in New York State in 1853 and arrived in Waukegan in the late 1870s as a single man. So he needed a wife, and so Mr. Brochon had 4 daughters, and one of them was Sarah. So he courted Sarah for about a year and a half, and he marries her in 1881. Well, now he's got a wife. Now he better roll up his sleeves, and what's he going to do? Well, he starts a machine shop, Madison Avenue below the hill, and they produce advertising, recording scales, okay? Basically for trains. So the train would pull up, boxcar stop on it, guy recorded. The big mansion was inside, so they could do it without standing next to the train or making an adjustment there. The mecca of auto production was not Detroit at all. It was all the greater Chicago. It was the greater Chicagoland area that had all the early auto production. Before that, they tried. Clark tried building a car here with the machines they had. So this is an Apollo. It's a 5-seater. It's a luxury touring car. It's a 4-cylinder water-cooled engine, 3-speed transmission. We're sure that the frame and the fenders, for the most part, probably were not manufactured here. But the big upgrade of this that only a few of them were doing at the time is this is shaft driven. The rest of them were chain driven, which means the way they would have to have some of the suspension would be much more rigid. So that was $2,500, and you can see by 08, a guy named Henry Ford changes all of that. Model T Ford is built somewhat in a assembly line fashion, sells for $600. It's a real simple car, but it keeps your wife out of the mud, gets you everywhere you want to go. We're going to talk about the Academy Theater. Hey!
Well, okay, well, before the Academy Theater was there was a school there called the Waukegan Academy. You knew that, of course. The Academy Theater opened up on June 10th, 1916. And its claim to fame was perfect ventilation. Of course, there was no air conditioning, but they could get a breeze through the Academy Theater. It also said it had 1,000 seats, 10 cents a seat. And it was the only theater in town that had a real pipe organ. It was built by George Spohr, who was an entertainment fella from NSC Studios, and his brother Walter ran the theater for many years until 1927 when the Genesee was built. Then that management of the Academy Theater went to Great States. I believe it was Great States. And they managed the theater until 1974. The Spohr family owned the building for some time after that, but eventually they sold it. And in 1974, Plitt Theaters took over the management of the 2 theaters. And they showed movies there until 1982. And then in 1982, Plitt Theaters gave it up. And that was to be the last movie that was shown in downtown Waukegan. But no, George Kalanis decided to buy the theater, and he showed movies until 1989. So the last movie that was shown downtown Waukegan was 1989. Well, after Mr. Kalanis had it, he sold it to Jory Perez. And Jory opened up what was called the Fiesta Palace, a Hispanic cultural center. And that remained open until 2003. Then he sold it to the city. And it mysteriously burned down in 2004.
Our first newspaper here started in 1845. It had a great name, the Little Fort Porcupine and Democratic Banner. With a great name like that, you would have thought it would have lasted forever, but it only lasted a few years. After that, a lot of other papers started and stopped with limited success. And it wasn't until 47 years later when we had our first daily paper, the Waukegan Daily Register. Now let me read a little bit from an early Little Fort Porcupine and Democratic Banner to you. They're great. They have wonderful stories in here. But this one I'm going to read here, tells us about the name of our town. And the first name of our town was Little Fort. Well, here, it says Waukegan. This is the title which some of our citizens wish to have given to our village instead of Little Fort. It is said that Waukegan means fort. Whether it is the case or not, we have our scruples against any change in the name, as our place is fast rising into notice as Little Fort, and the name has belonged to us through good and evil report. We think it very impolite to get a new name and go over the same ground to spread the name of Waukegan and explain that it once was Little Fort. It is now laid down in all late editions of maps as Little Fort, and we are all unwilling to be blotted out of this medium of disseminating a knowledge of our whereabouts to accommodate visionary enthusiasts. Well, in this paper, I don't think they're going to change that name to Waukegan. I think it's going to just stay Little Fort.
L'amore non vuol sorrere